Hello everybody, this is Keeping It Real with FK and I'm your host Faisal Kapadia. Today we have with us a gentleman who I've known for the last 10 years. I think I first met him back in 2010 when I was doing some flood relief work, and they were organizing their relief efforts in Shikarpur as well. His name is Todd Shea. He is the founder of CDRS, an organization that's been working in Pakistan over the last decade, up north and down south, in flood relief in various capacities. And I'd like to welcome him to our show. Hi Todd, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Faisal. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what happened. What was your journey from when you came to Pakistan, why you never went back?
Well, in a nutshell, it was the love of the people here. I've been to many disaster zones over the years, even since I've worked in Pakistan the last 15 years, since the 2005 Zalzala. I've been to the Philippines, Haiti, Japan, Bangladesh for the Rohingya camps a couple times, other places. And everywhere I've ever gone, people are appreciative of the work I've done in logistics and helping medical teams and volunteer doctors do their jobs. But it was Pakistan where people asked me to stay. And the nature of Pakistanis being so hospitable and warm and emotional and genuine in these mountain villages and places, it just really took me, and I saw a lot of need here. So after originally coming with a group of Pakistani American doctors for the earthquake for 2 weeks, they asked me to stay a little longer. That became like 2 months. During that time, I just fell in love with the people, assembled a team together of my own. And then the army, in fact, is who helped us. The brigadiers and the men of the Pakistan Army that we worked with during the earthquake told me that they would help me register. So I had people in the army asking me to stay and they'd help me register, people in the villages. A lot of people came up from Karachi. I met a lot of people from Karachi that came up to help. So I just met all these wonderful people who didn't look at all like the terrorists that the United States and Western media portrayed Pakistan, because at that time I didn't know anything about Pakistan until I came here, and I had friends that said don't go there, because I had just come back from Hurricane Katrina, and before that the tsunami in Sri Lanka. So literally 5 minutes in the door from the Hurricane Katrina, I saw the news of the earthquake in Pakistan. My son and I were sitting there having a pizza. I hadn't seen him for a month because I was in the disaster zone in Louisiana, and it was all over the news. So I told my son, I'm going to Pakistan. Before I knew how I was getting there or who I was going with, then I called the Pakistan embassy and they told me about a group of Pakistani American doctors. So I invited some friends who I'd worked with at 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina and these disasters. And one guy went with me, an ex-Marine named Jim, but everybody else was like, you're going into the belly of the beast. You're going somewhere where, you're going to help a bunch of kids who are going to grow up and just blow us up someday. So when I came to Pakistan, I figured, I bet you a lot of that is baloney, and the reason is because I already knew and suspected our media of, having an agenda and maybe the lies of omission, not telling everything. So I very quickly learned that they only tell maybe 2% of the truth 100% of the time about Pakistan. You never heard about Edie, and you never heard about Muhammad Amjad Sakab and Al Kuwait Foundation and all the wonderful people like people like you and who did work at the 2010 floods. You don't hear about these beautiful, wonderful, amazing, brilliant children. The media in America only wanted to hear about Taliban and Al Qaeda and somebody that is ready to blow your head off with an AK-47. So when I came to Pakistan, I very quickly realized that I have been fooled, and many Americans, millions of Americans have been misled. Misconceptions are there. And so I just fell in love with the country, and I was asked to stay. Had an opportunity to start my own organization and went with it. And
what does CDRS mean?
Well, it's comprehensive disaster response services. So it was revolving around disaster logistics at the time.
But that's not the only thing you do now.
Not anymore. We did the floods of 2010 and 11 all over the Pakistan, and then Sindh in 2011. Then in 2009, the IDP's crisis was in Swat. We actually worked with Edie, and I worked with Imran Khan and Imran Khan Foundation during the Banu North Waziristan Army Operation 2014-15, the Jabori earthquake. But after about from 2015 on, up until these floods this year, there's been relatively calm. So we were able to then do our water projects. We have 300 plus water projects. We have a couple of RO plants right here in Karachi. reverse osmosis water filtration plants.
What do you mean by water projects?
The water projects are, some of them are solar powered reverse osmosis water filtration in areas where either the level of salt or minerals or contamination is so bad that you need an RO plant in order to have clean drinking water. Then there's other places where you can have hand pumps, cooey systems, and different ways of catching rainwater, especially up in the mountains. So there's many different water projects depending on the geography of Pakistan and the area of Pakistan and what it calls for. So we have about 300 plus now all over. From Chitral to Karachi, we have these water projects. We have a lot of them in Gandaka and Nasirabad, Balochistan area, in Tar, Umarkot. I'll be actually this week going and visiting some of those places that were hit by the floods to check on our water projects and also feed people. So we have these youth chapters. We have 23 youth chapters all over the country. Whenever a disaster hits, these guys have had training. They're really Januni university students and young people from villages and cities who just love their country, love Pakistan. They want to do something for the poor. They're energized. And unfortunately, though, even their families sometimes discourage them from doing this work because
it's not paid work.
Yeah, they want them to get a big job or something.
Yeah.
But these are kids that are so genuine about doing something for their fellow suffering citizens that they're going to do it even if they don't get paid. So we've found some of these people through Facebook, through our travels, and we support them. We give them respect. We give them a platform. We put their work on Facebook so our donors, mostly Pakistani Americans, Pakistani British, Pakistani Australians, people like some in Dubai, that's most of our donor base. Individuals and families. A couple organizations like APNA has supported us a lot. UK Medical Aid to Pakistan, Association of Pakistani Physicians and Surgeons UK. These are groups that have supported us in many different ways along our journey. Islamic Medical Association of North America brings doctors and we work with them. They supply us with funds. So we've got some good people, but a lot of our donors are individual Pakistani descended expats and diaspora that around the world that care about their country. They've made it big, they've done well, and they send money to us and others to do good work. And so they see the work that our youth chapters are doing, and a lot of them, maybe it's their home area or in a certain sector they're interested in, healthcare or education or feeding the poor during Ramadan, or when the disaster strikes, or rescuing kudas and billies, which we do a lot, and we have animal lovers around the world that help the animals here. So
I'll come to the pet shelter in a little bit. Tell me something. I don't think a lot of people know that you were a musician before you started all this. Why did you leave all that to go and help people around the world? It's not just Pakistan, like you just said. You've helped people around the world. Why did you decide to do that? Take that step?
Well, a kind of dramatic thing happened to me along the way. I was getting good reviews and playing in front of more and more people, putting out CDs. I went to New York. Sid Bernstein, who brought the Beatles and the Stones and Jethro Tull and others to America, and he was a promoter in the 60s and 70s that hit a lot of these artists really big in America from the UK. And of course, this was the year 2000 when he signed me. He was semi-retired, but he was still such a big name. When you brought the Beatles and Stones to America, everybody knows your name. So he knew a lot of people in the record business. He liked my music, and he set me up with a showcase for all the record labels to hear me at CBGB's nightclub. But that was September 12th, 2001. So the day before was 9/11.
Yeah.
So that kind of put the kibosh on that concert. 9/11 happened. I went down and worked at Ground Zero for a week. And while working at the site of the fallen towers, something changed in me. The pursuit of fame and fortune and money and adulation from thousands of fans just rang hollow to me after that. It felt, I have nothing against people that chase that dream.
Yeah, of course.
It's a perfectly legitimate course of action. But for me personally, because of what I learned about myself at Ground Zero, I learned I was good at logistics and good at helping these firefighters and doctors and even rescue dogs.
You discovered a skill set.
Yes, people that were trained to go into destroyed buildings and burning buildings, they need help. They need backline. They need people to take care of their transportation, their communication, their medicines, their supplies, their food, whatever, And so I was good at doing that. And after my 5 days at Ground Zero, and I would have stayed longer, except I was a lone wolf was really needed in the first days when things were chaotic. But once the
Government
larger
movement,
efforts
yeah.
took shape and they realized which buildings were not going to fall, because they literally had 50 and 60-story buildings around us that they thought were going to fall on us during the first 5 days. Finally, they got all that figured out. They were able to create warehouse space and get their larger efforts together. And then I wasn't needed anymore and I left. But I left Ground Zero a changed person. The pursuit of the music business for me, was, I guess, rich and famous and ego kind of for myself. And, I wasn't doing it for anybody else. I was doing it because I wanted to be famous and rich in the music business and use my talents for that. Afterwards, I guess it humbled me. The experience humbled me, but it also taught me that I have a skill set that was undiscovered. And all these music business dealings, being in the band, getting paid, setting up the equipment, driving God knows where, and the van breaks down and you have to fix it because you're in the middle of a cornfield somewhere in Iowa, and if you don't fix it, nobody's going to fix it. Dealing with managers and lawyers and radio station people, trying to get your record played, go in the studio and record, write your own songs. So I think from that you kind of learned logistics. So I was able to apply that to disaster, and I just felt a calling to do that kind of work after 9/11. I felt that it was a shallow, selfish pursuit, what I was doing before, and this actually mattered to people's lives. And I could still play music, I just wasn't doing it for the commercial thing and for my own ego and for my own self. So I still play music, and I've played with a lot of the biggest Pakistani singers and greatest musicians. I mean, some of the greatest musicians on the planet are here from Pakistan. It's incredible, the talent here. So it's been, for me, a way to learn the culture, learn the language. And of course, I started out learning about a lot of the Pakistani westernized pop singers, which are very good because they put the Eastern flavor into their music. But the real stuff, like Sanam Marvi and Sayan Zahur, and I can keep just going on. And of course, discovering more about Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and some of the instruments here, like the ribab and the sarangi and the tabla. They're just fascinating, and I really enjoy more than going to a big famous concert. I like going to some small village and hearing the local music.
You like folk music?
Yeah, I mean, there's something spiritual about it. It takes you way up there, and then at the end, you don't want to come down. You're up there somewhere. So whether it's the music, the khana, the mountains. Pakistan is a magical, mystical place for all of its problems that people often talk about. I see problems in America and all the rest around the world too. I think Pakistan is unfairly maligned because it's at the center of the geopolitical dartboard. Yeah. You got all these countries and geopolitics going on, and Pakistan always is at the geographical and religious and political center of all of that, seems to be. So, it's a tough place for the people here to have been, but somehow they make it and they survive, and you see brilliant kids here and you see a lot of potential here. So I fell in love with the country and chose to keep working here and do my projects here. And I'm married to a Pakistani girl now. I think what ends up happening is you have, whenever you have any movement, you have your more radical elements of that movement.
Yeah.
So the more radical elements are fed up and angry, and they're striking out, and without making excuses for it, anybody with any sense can predict that when you have injustice and frustration, and you have a systemic violence against a people, that you're going to have people that are fed up and they're going to strike back, and these things are going to happen,
but then
whether we like them to happen or not.
But then most of the militias are white.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was saying to you. Like, I don't hate white people and I don't hate America, but what I do hate is our system, which has gone way off course into hypocrisy and into fascism, instead of going towards what we say we're about: liberty, justice, all men are created equal, and all of those wonderful things that are written literally in stone on our monuments. Our leaders have gotten away from that, and a lot of people have been misled and fooled about places like Pakistan around the world. They've been made to fear. They've been made to otherize people. They've been made to be scared of all Muslims and think that whatever they have and their status is going to be destroyed and taken over. And so there's so much fear. And what I hate is white supremacists and racists and white supremacy more than anything. I hate all forms of racism, but the most destructive in the world, I think, has been white supremacism. It's responsible for what Hitler did in Europe in World War II, and even before that. It's responsible for what we're going through now. And I think it's the last gasp of these white supremacists. And Donald Trump didn't create them. They created Donald Trump.
Yeah.
They gave the opportunity for someone like him.
They're the reason he's in power.
Yeah, so even if he loses, these people are still to be reckoned with. And I think that there's going to be probably more upheaval and maybe some flashpoints. And I would hate if there's a civil war. I hope it doesn't get to that point. But I think that what we're seeing is we're seeing people that are seeing that change is coming like a wave, and they're resisting it, and they don't want it, and they're afraid of it. But you know what? Well, what I've found is that, like, I don't know why white people are so afraid of African Americans and black people, because when you look at their 400 years history, they have been very kind to us. They have been more accommodating than we could ever imagine deserving to be. You know, if they had gone full terrorist on the American system, it would have been justified what has been done to them. So I find African descended people in America, the black people, to be quite tolerant. And but even tolerant people at some point have had all they can take. So a lot of people just had all they can take of their children being abused. And not only is there murders of African American men and some women, but they're getting brutalized and beaten and unfairly incarcerated and not having the same opportunities. And like all of these things end up adding up. And then we expect them to be mentally healthy and never make a mistake and don't get frustrated and don't do anything wrong. You oppress people for 500 years and you treat them like garbage. You enslave them. Then after you even freed them, you didn't really let them be free or own anything. They still had to work on the plantation. They were still under the gun of the Southern establishment that was racist and mistreated our black brothers and sisters. And only in the last 30, 40, 50 years have they had civil rights. But even those rights that were written down on paper were not respected. And so still we have this problem. So, I mean, if there's some of them that have lost their senses in frustration and anger, some of them have struck back, and some of them are even crazy, well, I mean, anybody will go
There's
crazy.
a reason for
Try not eating for 3 or 4 days and we'll all go crazy. So yeah, there's reasons for things. And so if we don't take the root causes of injustice and inequality in our world, and we stop this baloney just because of how much melanin is in the surface of our skin, if we can stop that, then we can maybe go on to bigger and better things. If we can't stop that, then I can guarantee you, without wanting it to happen, I can guarantee you that the world is going to burn. And hopefully whatever emerges from that burn will be a better world. I would like to say that it doesn't have to happen, but it may have to happen because the people who are holding on to this white supremacy in the leadership positions and in the rank and file, they don't want to let go because of fear, because of greed, because of this false sense of superiority. They're not going to let go. So sometimes maybe you have to get tough before things get better.
So tell me about your plans now, Todd. I mean, you're here in Karachi. You said you're going down to Badin and the areas to see what flood relief efforts are taking
Mir
place.
Prakas and Sajawal.
Tell me about this raft that you guys have built in the flood relief areas.
Well, I can't take credit for it, but you know, I have an engineer that does our water projects, Iftikhar. He's an engineer of over 30 years of experience. You know, he handles the nuts and bolts of the technicalities of our water projects, especially the reverse osmosis water filtration and the more technical things, building projects, building schools, whatever. So him and his team are out there, and not far from, I think, Umarkot is where he discovered a half-submerged village. And there was a lot of children and women in the houses there, and
sitting on the rooftops,
sitting on the roof or sitting inside up on tables or wherever.
Yeah.
And then the men would go through the water, which has snakes and scorpions and stuff all stirred up because of the floods. And so they would go to try to get whatever supplies they could. So we discovered an area that was in need, and we took a charpai and 2 tire inner tubes from a tractor, and we made a raft, and we got those kids out of the village, and we sent food in to, because you know, a lot of the men and the young boys, they don't want to leave because their property and their whatever they have is there, whatever little they do have. So we use the raft to get people out and bring supplies in.
That's pretty
so
cool.
This is the kind of stuff we're doing.
That's use of indigenous materials present there to just
and it's simple, but it's effective, right? So we've given a lot of food out. In fact, my Karachi CDRS youth team has been going into neighborhoods and giving out bottles of water, especially when there was a lot of water standing. They were giving out water, they were giving out food in the remote areas in Sindh, mosquito nets, and we've even started rebuilding either houses that were destroyed or partially damaged. The roofs were damaged. So we're doing some construction. Thank goodness our donors are very much been supporting this effort and sending funds. A lot of people who are from Karachi or Sindh who are in the States and doing well, and they feel helpless, they want to do something. So through us, they're able to do something. We're a team. Our donors are just as important as our people on the ground. And it's not just Todd Shea, it's not a one-man effort. Got a lot of Pakistanis involved in what we're doing. And for the last 5 months, we have fed over 60,000 people that have been economically affected by the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. And again, these are people that our youth teams have fed all over Pakistan. Every province, including AJK in the northern areas.
Has the perception changed since you've been working here over the last 10 years? Do you feel it changed back home towards Pakistan, towards what people think of as?
Well, anybody that knows me well has heard all about how Pakistan really is without, the only source of information they had before was Fox News or CNN or whatever. And now they've got me. On a larger scale, I've never really been covered except for once. I think in 2009, the New York Times did an article about me, and that bumped some of the people getting a hold of me. And I had a few more Goras support us for a while. But unfortunately,
you call them Goras as well.
Goras. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a lot of. Maybe the things I'm saying is not what they want anybody to hear.
Of course.
I suppose the narrative is different. But that being said,
but you're just speaking from what you've seen on ground.
From what I've seen. But what is cool is that it's not just me. There's a lot of people that have come to Pakistan, foreigners and Pakistani expats and Pakistanis who've made really beautiful videos. You got Umair Jaswal, who's done a thing, Rahi, on his motorcycle, and in that he's shown the people of Pakistan in ways that most people haven't seen. So these things are on YouTube, accessible to anybody. So because of the internet and the proliferation of channels and more ways to connect with people, I have noticed in the last maybe 5-6 years that there is a difference in the way that people understand Pakistan. It's not just through the lens of knowing about Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and so-called corrupt leaders or whatever, which Pakistan may have corrupt leaders, but trust me, their corruption is nothing compared to the corruption of the United States government, Congress, bought off and paid off by the special interest groups, by the Indian government and the Indian American community. As much as I love the Indian people, they're playing a lot of games in the Indian government over in the U.S. They put a lot of money into lobbying U.S. Congress, the Israeli government, and the Israeli American community. So they have their narrative. And unfortunately, the corruption is rampant. These people, these senators and congressmen, they will be influenced by who can get them reelected and pay for their trips to some desert, beautiful island in the middle of the Caribbean. So it's not
about liberty and justice anymore, it's about money.
It's all about money, and it's been that way for a while. The facade was there for a while, but now it's all completely broke down. Most people understand it's a bunch of baloney. There are people that are true believers. I believe in the American principles that I grew up with. Unfortunately, I learned that my leaders don't believe in that they just use that to then fool people and manipulate people and misguide people. And unfortunately, one of the reasons the world is a place of turmoil is because America, having had the opportunity, thanks to Pakistan in large part, to be the lone superpower in the last 30 years, has squandered that opportunity.
Didn't do nothing.
And instead, the world is more dangerous, more problematic. And you know what? This is my personal opinion. Okay, so Article 370 gets rescinded, and the Kashmiri people who've already been abused and oppressed and mistreated by the Indian government, and the Pakistani government has tried everything it can with whatever it can do to try to tell the world what's going on, but the world hasn't been listening. All these governments want Indian money. They're all drooling over Indian markets. So unfortunately, we have a situation where the Kashmiri people are left to their own devices. So Article 370 happens. In the last year, Kashmiris have been locked down, haven't been able to go to school, have been disappeared.
And you've worked
raped.
in areas near Kashmir.
Yes, they've been raped and they've been blinded. I've worked right up into the line of control. I'd go over there, but I'm not allowed to. And the Indian government doesn't want anything to do with me because they know my true feelings, and I've spoken out very heavily about it. But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that God, Allah, is there saying, okay, the rest of the world wants to have the Kashmiris locked down and not say a word and not do anything about them. I can put a little microscopic virus out there and we can lock down everybody. The whole world can be locked down.
That's a way to look at it, yes.
That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory, if you might call it that.
Hey, you want to lock these millions of people down in Kashmir
Yeah.
Valley and you don't care and you're not doing anything about it, and the UN isn't doing anything because they don't have the teeth to do anything. The US government...
A lot of people think that the pandemic has been a sort of like a wake-up call.
It's a wake-up call, but you're right. It's a wake-up call for everything that's going on in the
Yes.
world. To
All the
reassess
injustice.
and look at how we're living and how we're doing, what we're doing to each other. But I really think that it very, very well may be that Allah said to himself, okay, you want to lock down Kashmir and nobody in the world is caring and doing anything about it.
I'm
and
going to
they're
lock
just
down
letting
the
it-
world.
So I can just show everybody what it feels like.
Yeah.
We can all be locked down. And then maybe they'll take it as a warning sign. And maybe if we don't pay attention to this virus and don't pay attention and look introspectively at how we can change the world so that it is a just place for everybody, because there's enough food and there's enough for everybody. It's just the way that the system has been
It's just a
constructed by
distribution.
man. It's unfair and unjust. So as long as we keep it this way, we're going to keep having wars, we're going to keep having problems, we're going to keep having troubles. And one day God may say, instead of this virus that only has about a 5% kill rate, maybe I can put another one there. If they don't get it this time, I can put one that kills 90%. I would have never known what a wonderful and magical, mystical place Pakistan is in so many ways. So it's enriched my life, and I've fallen in love with the people here, and it's never a dull moment. And one thing about Pakistan that's different from other countries is that every 220 million citizen, it's like there's 220 million prime ministers. This is the country of 220 million prime ministers, and I love it. Fiercely independent. And they say what's on their mind.
Yeah,
and other countries, just right around our borders, wherever you go, if you say what's on your mind, you can disappear and get locked up. But here, people say what they think, and they have free speech here in Pakistan. So the thing is that I don't really have a plan for tomorrow. But I know that my team and I and my NGO will be here to serve people. And until God takes me to wherever I'm going, and I'm not all that sure where, but wherever I go, when that time comes, I'll probably be, still working in Pakistan and trying to do whatever I can to help good people here, because there are problems here that poor people face, that animals face, children face, that women face, and they're going to need help. And so
Tell me about the
I'm
animal
here.
shelter you want to build.
What's that?
Tell me about the animal shelter you want to build. You've been
Well,
talking about that as well.
Yes. Well, we have, as I said, we have our disaster relief projects and we have our water projects. We have 2 medical facilities, one in Swat, one in Kanaya for child health and women and children health. We have a house of blessings for orphans and widows and orphans in Islamabad that we want to expand, because that's doing a great job taking care of people that were in really bad situations economically and where they were living. So what we are also doing is helping the kutas and billies. And there's a reason for that.
Just kutas and billies or other animals also?
Other animals too, donkeys and horses, but we've been concentrating on kutas and billies. Why? Because they are domesticated and they're stray and they're multiplying everywhere. And that becomes a nuisance. They spread disease, they spread rabies, they bite children on their way to school. When they die, when the government or somebody poisons them, that water, once the body's decomposed, that poison goes into the water system. It's just the way that we're handling this problem. It's not only cruel and inhumane, it's actually not effective. It just, the animals around fill in the gap because nobody's dealing with it on a national level. We should look to our friends Turkey, who have done a wonderful job vaccinating the animals, neutering and spaying them, and then letting them live their lives. And then they don't reproduce. So after a year or two, you see less and less animals and less disease spread and less. So it's what I tell people who say to me, I hate animals, or why are we worrying about animals? Because there's so many children that need help. I say to them, we need the people. It's the people who hate animals that we need on board with us, because you'll love us if you support us And our program is successful, along with all of our partners. If the government comes in on board and we really do this on a national scale, you're going to love us because you're going to see less kutas and bilis on the street suffering and being a nuisance. You're going to see less disease spread. You're going to see less of these incidents where you have to shoot them and poison them or whatever. You're going to see less dead carcasses on the road, which, by the way, create a place for more flies to be born.
Yes.
And then they land on our chicken cry when we're having lunch. And then we eat a little bit of whatever those flies landed on, which is nasty.
Again, I think it's a circle. You get what you put in.
That's right. And we will get the diseases, and the water supply will be more tainted. So in order for us to care about our society, our environment, and our children, we have to rescue the kutas and bilis. The Holy Prophet said it best. He forgave the sins of a woman of ill repute who was doing wrong in her life. And he said, your sins will be forgiven by Allah and you will enter paradise. Why? Because she gave a starving street dog a drink of water from her shoe. And that act of compassion and kindness alone erased her sins.
Yes,
and that's what Pakistanis and people around the world need to understand. These are domesticated animals. We domesticated them from the wild, but then we put them back out in the wild. They're eating our trash and our garbage, and they're doing very well on that. They live off that, and the proof of that is that they're having kittens and puppies everywhere. So they're able to survive. If you shoot 100 dogs and one area doesn't have dogs, within 6 months, it'll be refilled again. You know, it's just a problem that keeps happening. So everybody has to be aware of this problem and think of it in a larger sense. And what we can do is doable. It's not undoable. It only costs 3,000 or 4,000 rupees at the most to fix a cat or dog so they can't have kittens and puppies or can't make kittens and puppies. So, and then the government, if they subsidized that and gave a tax break to the veterinarians for every cat or dog that they spayed or neutered, then we'd have more of the vets even on board to help out more.
True.
You know, you create a financial incentive for a solution. It's not a bad thing. These animal veterinarians are overworked. They're overwhelmed. So we gotta, if we can all be a part of helping them do this and making it affordable, then we can lick this problem. And then we don't have all of these societal environmental issues that are caused by too many cats and dogs. And the barking at night isn't there, and all of the nuisance going on and the disease spread, all of these vectors for disease. We manage all that. And we do it in a way that's sustainable.
Todd, I wanted to thank you, not just for coming on my show, but for helping Pakistan in all the different ways you have been. I don't know if I've ever thanked you. I've known you for 10 years, but
You have.
But you've been doing wonderful work, and you're an honorable man, and I respect you for what you believe in. Thank
Well,
you,
the children of this country are worth my time. They're worth it, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.